Greetings, let's talk. So, this video, the second in this series, is talking about how I make medallions and how I try and learn and preserve the techniques of the late period 15th century artisan who actually invented portrait medallions and brought sandcasting into the European artistic world. And in the last video, we talk about how I lay it out, how I design it, how I draw it. And in this video, I wanted to talk about how I make one of the physical elements. Now, I call it the puck, and you'll see why in a minute. But historically, what Pisano did, if you look at collections of his works, the Victoria and Albert Museum in England, their website has a lot of his work. There's a couple of private collections that have examples with some notes on those examples online. And they all talk about his models, what he would cast from, being made of either slate or clay, fired clay. And these would be smooth, round discs that he would then build the details up on with beeswax. Now, I've actually tried the discs. I've tried it with slate. I got a couple of slate coasters, and it's actually a phenomenal material. It works great. The trouble is cost. Now, slate itself is very cheap, but the real hidden cost is that I had to hook up a belt sander with a decent grit sandpaper, and I went through $20–25 in belt sander belts, grinding down one of these coasters into the right shape and the right smoothness for my purposes. And the first time I did it, I caught a weak point in the chunk of slate I was using, and the thing shattered in my hands. So that was $20 in sandpaper and about 2 hours worth of time just out the window. I had to start over again. It's absolutely historically accurate to do it that way. I should actually have a giant milling wheel, a grinding wheel, and grind it down that way. That's certainly what Pisano would have done. He would have had grinding stones or honing stones to grind down slate and shape it. But I don't have those tools, and I don't really have the money to get them. At least not at this point in my life. And I love working with ceramics. I've done clay before in other venues, but I don't have access to a kiln. And if I were to get an electric kiln, it would effectively add a zero to my electric bill. And that's not something I can do. So my answer here is take a step to the modern, and I'm going to use, this is Sculpey. You probably saw me open that box up. And I've actually found that Sculpey is very cost effective if you buy it in bulk. So that's I think a 3.5 pound box, and I think I paid $29 for it. So very cost effective. And what you're seeing here, those two wood sticks are my depth gauges. I've got 3 different wood blocks there. I've got a 1/4 inch square, 3/8 of an inch square, and 1/2 inch square. And as you can see, I'm just laying them down. And I'm using my rolling pin to roll out the clay, and that gives me a nice uniform thickness. And then I use those are cookie cutters, circle cutters, and I'm positioning those to get 3 cuts for each size. You're probably wondering why I've got 3 different sizes there when I'm doing 3 of each size. Um, while I'm doing this, there's no point, there's just no good reason to do one cut, one puck at a time. So I always cut them and cook them in batches, so I have several on hand for future projects. And I have a couple of projects coming up, so I know I'm going to use these. That's part of the reason I chose the sizes I did. And part of the drawback of the cut is it kind of seals them down to the tile. As I was doing this, I realized I should probably lay down a sheet of wax paper or something, or cooking parchment paper, and that way I can just pick it up and move it over to the tray without having to mess with the edges. But as you can see, I'm just working this here. And actually, I do need to do a shout out in this. The person who told me about Sculpey was Master Bjorlik Folklinson, and he was talking about one of the many arts he does is metal casting, as well as cold work for silver and other metals. And he told me about another artisan when he was much younger in the SCA who made a model out of Sculpey and just cooked it until it was rock solid and used that as a model to sandcast from. And I like the idea. And I've been using Sculpey for about 5 years now. Maybe, actually, it's closer to 6 years. And I can tell you that while Sculpey is great material as a model, and the instructions are very clear and very straightforward, they'll tell you to cook it. I think it's 200, 225 or whatever for 15 minutes per inch thickness. I've done that, and it doesn't work for my purposes. That is enough to make Sculpey a solid, and enough to make it very durable. It'll stand up on its own. It'll hold weight. You can use it as like a pencil holder or a bookend or something like that. But I need something that is hard, rock solid, no give, no flex. So what I found is drop the temperature down about 50 degrees. I'll usually go for an oven about 160, 170, and I will leave it in there for 3 hours and just cook it until it is rock solid. And you'll see what that looks like in a little bit. And as you can see here, I'm just picking up the blanks, kind of peeling them up there, which I'm very used to, and I'm laying them down on the tray. And you probably think these look kind of thick. 1/4 inch is, you probably think that's pretty thick, and it is. For this particular set of pucks, I did want them this thickness, and they're going to be weapons grade thickness. When I do the castings on anything, any of these that I turn into final models, they're going to come out very heavy casts of pewter, which is my goal. You see me putting the little tinfoil tent over it. This helps make sure the heat in the oven distributes evenly, so that there's no potential burning from the overhead coils as the oven is cooking them. Now, as we get back to my bench here, even though this video looks like it's taken just a few minutes later, this is actually the next evening. I had put these in the oven and pulled them, left them in. I think I cooked them for 3.5 hours at 170 degrees. And you can see me there, I'm tapping it on my work surface, and it is rock solid. It let out a solid tink tink. It sounded like I was setting a glass down on that tile plate. I'm going into my workbench here. This is actually, I'm going into my toolbox here, and behind me, relative to this camera, is my metal casting kit. It has all of my tools, all of my work surfaces, and everything. And I've got a homemade folder, really, that I keep my sandpaper on. And what I'm doing here is this this is where I am going to take the pucks, now that they're cooked and they're solid, and I'm going to grind them down until they are as smooth as I need them to be. Like I did in the last video, I photograph all my steps. I've got some documentation I need to write for a couple of upcoming events. And you can also see from these pictures that I mentioned Sculpey is not thermally stable. It will actually shift and distort a little bit while it's cooking. And the edges and the surfaces are not smooth. They are not even. And that's the opposite of what I need. I need these to be very smooth and very even. So in order to do that, we grind them down against a perfectly smooth surface. And these photographs here will let you see a lot of the imperfections and the details that really I'm trying to grind out of it. And that's a set of calipers that I'm using to check the thickness. On several occasions in the past, I have sat down and started sanding, and I come out with a puck that is uneven. It's noticeably thinner on one end than on the other. I don't like that, so I use my tools to help gauge me. I quickly figure out here that the selection of sandpaper I chose just wasn't up to par. I thought I had grabbed a strong enough grit, and it didn't. Like as soon as I started grinding, I'm like, no, this is not pulling off enough. And this is a stronger grit, and you can see it scraping off more stuff almost immediately. But even this, I'm not happy with. Part of it was I expected more to grind off the puck. Part of it was the puck really had some serious blemishes on the face. So I spent a couple of minutes here grinding at this one, and even this one I'm just not happy with the progress I'm making. And you can see high spots, and all that white you're seeing, that's ground up dried Sculpey. I can't reuse it, I can't add water to it or anything. It's cooked, it's solid, it's at this point a dust. And it is clogging up the abrasive material on that sandpaper. So that sandpaper is getting less and less effective by the second. It's also got some junk on it, which is, you can see on the puck there on the top part, it's got some dark dust ground into it. And I'm just not liking this process. I'm using one of my brushes here to try and scrape off the dust so that I can make this thing work. And if this looks like a slow, painful, annoying process, trust me, it is. You're absolutely right. If this took up a larger portion of the overall job, I probably would do something else. I can't stand doing this. And this particular puck was fighting me. The sandpaper wasn't abrasive enough. The puck was a little thicker than I think it strictly needed to be. And I was, I'm grabbing one of my metal bristle brushes. This is the brass brush, and I'm actually using it to scrape all of the Sculpey dust out of the sandpaper. And I'm just not, I'm fighting it. I'll freely admit I'm fighting the process here. I don't like it. And you can see the paper now has so much dust built into it that it is taking tiny shavings off. At this point, I'm glad the audio is off on this video because I was saying some not kind things. And what was worse was that every time I picked the puck up and felt it, I wasn't taking enough down to take care of the high and the low spots. It still was uneven. It still was, it was just a mess. So, is it normally an easier process? Yes. Is it normally a simpler process? Yes. But art isn't always easy. It isn't always simple. It isn't always the ideal circumstances. So I wanted to just share this video and show me at this point fighting with my tools, arguing like you should be working. Why aren't you? I think at this point I got the bright idea that maybe if this piece, because it was a newer piece, was cleaned off a little bit, it might grind more. And it was a stupid idea when I had it, and looking back on it, it's still a stupid idea. You noticed it's not generating any dust. It's not generating any white filings, and it's not working. It absolutely is not working. So this is where I remembered another spot in my shop where I normally keep my woodworking supplies, and this is my power tool woodworking. So I am over there, and I remembered I had a sheet of much lower grit sandpaper, and I'm rooting around in my shelves, and I am coming back with the I mean business sheet of sandpaper. And oh yes, this, the moment I did it, I was like, okay, now we're making progress. And as much as we're talking about synthetic Sculpey and oven-fired clay and sandpaper, I really need to impress upon everyone how far removed this isn't from a lot of the period practices. You know, we have been shaping and smoothing and rounding stones for millennia. In real life, Pisano would have probably had a whole assortment of honing stones, not unlike a lot of the stones that are used to sharpen knives or metal tools. Probably much larger and some rougher, coarser faces on one side, and he would have used those to shape stone, to shape slate, or either that, or he would have hired a mason to do it, because a mason, now this is absolutely the type of work this stonemason could do, and you give him enough coin, and he absolutely could turn out a whole bunch of blanks like this. Or you could have gone to a potter. Now, I don't know enough about pottery to know how you would get a perfect disc. I would imagine with that you would do all the shaping before firing, but don't quote me on that. I don't know. I don't know enough about ceramics to know if you could grind it down or shape it at all after it's fired, or if there's some intermediate step. But as you can see in just a few moments, I have ground down that face. I am very happy with actually both faces. They're clean, they're smooth. And now I've moved down to the edges. What was a very uneven edge, which was pitted and had a lot of lip on it, is now a perfectly round edge, and just a very simple couple of strokes with that sandpaper. And that's 100 grit. And I'm able to shave down all of the imperfections. And the reason I call it a puck is just because that's what it looks like. It looks like a hockey puck. In real life, I think you would call this a blank. I think Pisano would refer to them as blanks or just discs. He was remarkably, from what I've read so far, he was remarkably quiet about the details of his work. It wasn't until much later examples from his students and his grand students, sometimes 2 or 3 student generations removed from him, that we start seeing more detail about Pisano's work and what he used. This is me. I'm mostly satisfied with that puck, and that's the only one I want to do for this video, but I'm trying to see if I can salvage this piece of sandpaper. I think I decide that one is probably usable for... oh, no, I wanted to get a smoothing pass. 100 grit, which is the brown stuff I was using, left. The puck was smooth, but it had a lot of coarse scratch marks on it. And now we're back to I think these are 180 grit, which, with all of the major imperfections out, this lets me smooth it down to a much, much smoother surface. And this will let me get that down to a surface that I'm comfortable working with. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, why don't you tape or glue your sandpaper down? And there's sometimes I do that. If I'm doing a lot of sanding, I will. But you notice I flip between 3 different pieces of sandpaper here just in these few minutes, and I don't feel like scraping masking tape or duct tape off of my my work surface. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the reason I'm using a tile for my work surface here is medallions are one of those things where you want everything flat. And realistically, the flattest thing you're going to be able to buy before you get down to professionally machined parts that are, thousands of dollars and accurate to the tens of thousandth of an inch is a floor tile. Most floor tiles are honestly breathtakingly smooth and flat. It's an excellent surface for exactly this type of work. I actually use another tile to flat and true my woodworking tools. I'll just put a cheap piece of sandpaper down, tape it down in that case, and I'll use a tile to flatten out my chisels or flatten out the soles of my metal planes. So this is just the best surface for that. Also, later on you'll see when I'm doing work with wax or I'm doing my actual casting with metal, it's the best surface to catch any hot material, especially metal, because it'll absorb the heat immediately. It cools the metal when it's melted. If anything spills, I don't have to worry about it running around. It's a dream to clean up. So just overall great surface. If you do any sort of art or craft that has a smooth surface requirement, go get a ceiling or go get a floor tile from your hardware store. I think I paid like $3 for this one, and it's lasted me, 4.5 years at this point. I'm very happy with it. I think, yeah, this is where I grab one of my really finer grits of sandpaper. I think this is 180 or 200. And this is where this is my smoothing pass. This is where I can get the sculpey down to what's effectively glass smooth for this. And you notice that now that it's really smooth, it is generating a lot of dust because this is where it is shaving down a lot of surface evenly. You're hearing a meow. That is Bella, my studio cat, saying hello, and she's now in my arms as I narrate this. And more smoothing passes to true up the edges. It's just a process. I could explain it to you in 3 or 4 minutes, but I wanted you to see the details. I wanted you to actually experience this in real time so you understood what went into making a puck. And if you're the least bit concerned about all of that dust going onto the workbench, because it's obviously going onto my drawings, it's not falling onto my measuring drawings that I took, that you saw in my first video. And this stuff is not that messy. It's a pile of dust. I'm going to grab a dustpan. And I'll sweep. I think that's what I'm doing here, yeah. I'm just going to grab a dustpan and a small brush, and I'll clean it up in just a couple of sweeps. And that's a trash can right behind me. No, I'm not one of these heathen that just sweeps stuff up and then throws it back on the floor. I know people that do that. That's not me. So, I now have a complete puck. And if you want to see what I'm going to do with that puck, how this and the previous video come together, you'll have to catch the next video. But I wanted to share this with you. It's very simple. It's not complicated. There's not a lot of detail here. And it is ahistorical. This specifically is not how Pisano did his work. But at the same time, I wanted to point out that these type of modern, what should we call them? These type of modern innovations make art like this accessible to me. It makes it accessible at a price point that's not going to break the bank or render this only doable by someone with a much higher salary than I have. And I still also always take heart in the similarities. To think that Pisano probably spent an hour, smoothing out a slate disc and rounding it out, or spent an hour fussing over a piece of clay before he had it fired, so it was just right. These are things that help connect me with the past, and that's one of the things I appreciate about my art, is that connection with the past, even if it is an imperfect connection. So, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you taking your time to join me here, and I hope you got something out of this, and I'll look forward to sharing the next video with you.